expert interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM, and today I'm joined by Julie Hansen. How are you doing, Julie?
I'm great. How are you, John?
Excellent, very good. And Julie, this is the time of year where people are starting to make plans for those sales kickoff meetings. You know, they're booking hotels in Arizona, or that's where we used to go to Arizona, or Florida, or somewhere warm, right? If they're lucky, if they've got
If
the
they're
money.
lucky. I've been to some in Chicago in January, so I don't know if that's
if they're lucky. So they're planning their sales kickoff meeting, and oftentimes, there's a lot of money and effort put into a sales kickoff meeting,
Sure.
but there's not always a great return from it. Sometimes they bring in sales trainers, sometimes keynote speakers, whatever, but the return is kind of a little bit suspect. So what we wanted to talk about today is, how do you get better ROI from a sales kickoff?
Yes, and like you said, there's a lot of money and time and energy being put into these events, and you only have to think back to last year's sales kickoff and how much you really remember to realize that a lot of that doesn't have the staying power that you would like. And what happens is there is so much that people often try and pack into these meetings. There's new products and services, new technology, you've got some new product and feature training, you've got new marketing messaging, and then we throw in some selling skills to top things off. And, at the end of the day, what does that salesperson remember? And what are they actually doing, which is the key, 9-10 months later? Yeah. What are they applying?
Well, not to mention that we also tend to throw in a bunch of parties and late nights as well, and still expect people to go through the product training, the sales training, all of the other messaging training. So one of the things that's often missing is a plan coming out, right?
Yes, I think people are better at planning. There's a lot of tools now on how to plan a sales conference and kickoff, and see, what theme can we use to tie it all together. And I think sometimes it's easy to get sort of wrapped up in all the bells and whistles and not think about, okay, we've got a lot of great stuff we're throwing in here, but how do we structure it and present it in a way that people are going to remember? I look at it as really like a multi-day presentation. If you're going to a customer and seeing them for, spending a couple days, you've got a complex solution you're presenting. You have to think about, okay, at the end of the 2 days, what are they going to walk away with? What are the 3 or 4 messages I want to be reinforced throughout that time period, and I want them to be able to remember when it comes time to make a decision. And I think in that planning process, a very important part that is often missed is, how do I make this sticky? How do I make these key ideas that I'm spending a lot of money on to get maybe some big speakers in to present? How do I make sure that those have staying power?
Yeah, no, I agree, because as I think back, and I've been to many a kickoff and been involved in many over the years, is that very few of them have that implementation plan for afterwards, or those milestones, or that measurement about how we're going to measure what we've done over these few days is actually making any impact.
Right. So follow-up is definitely a piece that can solidify a lot of the things that are learned, and that should be part of the pre-planning. What is the immediate follow-up? Getting all the speakers involved to support the work that they've done, whether it's follow-up webinars, emails, videos, what have you, and just doing that at the same time, and not realizing come March, gosh, we're not actually doing what we learned in that one session, and having to backpedal. So putting that front end in the process, that follow-up, is really key.
And then getting back to one of the early points you made, and that is, do you think people try to pack too much in, and is less more? Would you be better off figuring out a couple of key things that you want to achieve with your sales organization at the kickoff, and really, doing it comprehensively, reinforcing it, etc.?
I think less is almost always more today, because people are so overwhelmed. And like we talked about, all those things coming at people in a sales kickoff. But that's tough. When you get people together maybe once, twice a year, it's your opportunity to present a lot of new ideas, new programs. But I think you have to be realistic about what it is you want people to do afterwards. It's just like it's like a customer situation. At the end of the call, what do you want them to do? If you don't think about it, if you don't plan for that, then you are at the mercy of whatever strikes them. Right? It's just like a call to action during a presentation. You don't have one, then your customer gets to figure out what their action or action isn't. So what do you want them to walk away with? And it doesn't mean you can't have a lot of different topics in there, but think about what key actions you want salespeople to take at the end of the 2 or 3 days, and how can you set those up so they have success implementing those. Yeah. And some of the tools to do that are to frame those sessions, connect the dots between a lot of those sessions. That's one way that really helps people remember, because a lot of times when you have these different sessions on, we're talking about product, I'm going to do some training here on this feature, and then we got new technology, they're all over the place. So even the individual speakers in your sales kickoff, make sure that they connect the dots somehow. So for instance, if you were doing a session as sales kickoff, and maybe you were talking about how to, identify where buyers are at in a certain phase of the process and how to target messages. And then I have a follow-up session. I would say, so you just spent some time with John talking about how to identify where buyers are at. You've got a great message that you sent out. You've got a response. Now let's talk about what happens when you get in front of them.
Right.
How you create some action around that. So just those simple actions of threading things together makes it, easier for the salesperson to kind of see the whole picture, and it creates a space for that in their brain, right? Those connections.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point, and it's a key point for the organization internally. I do remember some years back when I was at Huthwaite and we were doing a large sales training initiative for a very big, well-known company. And we actually had the 3 days before their kickoff, right? So they brought in all the people and we trained them. And we were lucky enough to be able to stay for the first day or so of the kickoff. The first day of the kickoff, they had 5 rooms set up for 5 different products, right? And the salespeople were then funneled in from room to room and basically, it was a show up, throw up, here's all the new features of this. But the piece that you're talking about, there was no connection between the sales training and the product training, right? And so instead of having that integrated piece where it would have been fantastic to have brought these into the sales training and have learned about how to sell them and how to position them in terms of creating customer value and all of that, they were done completely separately. So I think, to your point, if people think of this a kickoff as a holistic rather than departmental or functional, it'll be so much more powerful, right?
Absolutely. That's what happens is they get very distinct. Okay, marketing, you got your session, and send me the PowerPoint when you're ready, and we'll stick it in the and have it ready to go. And there's not a lot of coordination. So just some of those simple efforts can really improve people's takeaways. The other thing is to think about how is the quality of the presentations?
Right.
Because not everybody who presents, you have some executives, some internal people that maybe aren't used to speaking in front of big groups. And that can be a problem. And you want everybody to succeed. So you need to make sure that those people are ready, get them ready, have a coach help them with their messaging, their delivery, because it's much different being up on a stage versus sitting across from a small team. And then you've got mics, and a lot of times I've been at kickoffs and conferences, I'm sure you have too, where it's 10 minutes before and they're like, okay, here's your mic. Oh, by the way, don't turn too fast.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And it's suddenly there's this unnatural thing going on, and you're speaking in front of 300 people. And if you're not prepared for that, it can be very it can be very uncomfortable, and your audience is not as engaged as they could be.
Yeah. And I think some of that too is, I mean, I wish people would be a little bit more realistic when they plan these events, because as I said, I mean, they'll plan a reception that goes on till midnight, right? And then
Right.
they'll have the first talk at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's like, and they're expecting. I mean, it's almost like they're trying to put people through a test. It's like, how late and how like worse for wear can you be and still see if you can get up in the morning to make. But I think it's very unfair on both the attendees and the presenters when they're put in that situation. So I wish people would be a little bit more thoughtful in their planning. And again, I think that's because there's often disconnects. But what are some of the best kickoffs you've seen? What's happened at some of the best ones you've ever experienced?
I think the best ones that I've seen have that integrated quality to them. They tie things together, whether that's that they have MCs that just take the time to know what everybody else is doing and put the pieces together for the audience. That's one thing you can do. The ones that incorporate more interaction, and there's so many different options now with technology, whether it's real-time polls or some little group breakout exercises, video, just using a lot of variety, because like you said, you're fighting against people's time and their waning attention, and they're tired. They've got a lot of friends they haven't seen in forever. So you're really competing with a lot of obstacles. So it's important to keep that activity going. And so I've seen people use video and interactivity very smartly to keep people engaged.
Yeah. And do you think oftentimes too is that the sales kickoff isn't presented in the right way in advance to the people who are going to attend it? Like, they're not the expectations aren't set, because, when people sort of go, oh, I'm going to go to sales kickoff, it's going to be a load of presentations, a load of parties. And then at the end of the week, in one company I used to work for, they had this lovely, process. The kickoff was a week. You arrived on Sunday, and it was all full on for a whole week. It was back in the doctor days. Full on for a whole week, and then Saturday morning, first thing, they gave the salespeople their new quotas for the next year.
Saturday morning.
Saturday morning, So, but back to my kind of point is, do you think that there isn't enough expectation setting in advance and saying, here's what the kickoff is really for? It's for some, education, to learn about, the new products, maybe get some updates and some sales training. There's certain expectations of you to do work when you're there and to carry on this work throughout the year. Do you think that would help if the expectations were set better?
I think setting expectations is always a great idea. And to your point, sort of framing it, what are you really going to get out of this is a really good thing to do. And what's maybe going to be expected, which is kind of a reminder to pay attention in a nice way, but also think in terms of, we always think of how we have to sell ideas to our customer. You have to sell it to your sales team. Why is this important to you? It's not just you're going to get educated. You're going to get educated so that you can, at the end of the day, sell more, make more money. Setting up each session with, okay, here's what we're going to talk about now, and here's why this is important for you, and here's what I want you to listen for. So also framing each individual session into, here's why you need to pay attention. Here's why you're sitting here. It's not just, check this off your agenda, right? So selling the sales team is just every bit as big a job as selling a customer, because you've got several hundred people that aren't used to sitting in one place for a long time.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And listening. So it's the biggest challenge you have. Customers are much easier. They're used to sitting and listening a little bit better, not a ton, but you have to pull out all the stops. One thing I was just thinking that when you asked me about some things that I've seen that are done well at kickoffs is people that bring in, that do some of the pre-work they maybe work with some of the sales people that have done well or done something interesting in the field that they want to highlight, and have shot videos of them or have them come up and be part of the session, because that almost nothing gains more attention than seeing one of your peers up there, or seeing them not just win awards, that's great, but actually here's an idea that Bob used with a customer that we got on film, we wanted to share with everybody.
Yeah,
So
I love
those are
that
great.
idea. I love that idea. I think that's there's too often sharing is overlooked. We just run out of time, but there's so much to be gained by sharing the experiences and the
Right.
successes. But another thing is with some organizations, they think, okay, we'll put all this money into a kickoff, we bring in speakers, we do training. We're kind of done with our development for the year now, and you guys just go off and do your selling and see you at the next kickoff. I mean, that's obviously not a good strategy either, is it? Because you really need to have that ongoing coaching and mentoring throughout the year. So I mean, what do you say to organizations that may be tempted to fall into that trap of like one and done?
Yeah, that's just so unrealistic today. There's some research that shows that like 77% of what we learn we forget in a week.
Hmm.
So if you're putting all this pressure on your salespeople to retain so much information, and I think it's great to include selling skills. I think that's an important piece, as long as you, again, integrate it into the
Yeah.
whole session. But that's rarely going to be enough to support you throughout the entire year, especially if you're asking people to make some major changes. If it's just a minor shift, perhaps it's enough, but I don't know. I think there's a lot of behavioral psychology behind how people change, and that just doesn't hold water. That one and done.
No,
It
absolutely.
might not need daily reinforcement, but it's certainly going to need something more than that last half day after a 3-day action-packed, activity focused session. You're going to have something more to reinforce that.
Well, excellent. So basically, to get more ROI out of your kickoff meeting is make sure, number one, it's planned properly and all the elements are integrated. So the speakers are carrying on the ideas, and the other speakers, sales and marketing, are working together. You clearly set expectations that there is going to be some, learning that you got to do while you're here. Have a follow-up plan for how you're going to reinforce this throughout the year. And then make the sessions nice and interactive, and then maybe be a little better in your managing of events and that, so you actually have people's attention.
Right, right. Yeah, think of it like as each one is like a presentation. It's got to have an open, a close. It's got to have benefits. It's got to have a call to action,
Hmm.
and that gives it more structure than just this
Right.
big, like you said, blah, show up and throw up kind of event.
Yeah.
So,
Well, listen,
more.
thanks, Julie. This has been
Thank
great.
you.
In the last minute or so, I just wanted to give you a chance to tell the audience a little bit more about yourself, how they can contact you and find out more about you.
Oh, great. My company's called Performance Sales and Training, and you can go to my website. I do presentation and demo skills training and coaching and workshops. So, working with sales teams all over the world on how to refine, create that message that's really going to differentiate and highlight value, and deliver it in a way that instills confidence in the customer and moves them to take action.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Julie. My name is John Golden, SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM, and I'll see you all for another expert interview really soon. Thank you.
Thanks.